All right, so welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. We are happy to have you here and happy to share a little bit more about international education, international university options. And we hope that you leave this session with more tools and information as you start or continue the start in your college search, especially when it comes to international universities, of course. We'll let all of our panelists introduce themselves, but I just want to go ahead and say that we are all doing this webinar series on behalf of the Regional Admission Counselors of California. So we are all regionally based in the United States. Some of us are based in California as well, but we all serve and work with students in California. So we are your regional representatives and your admission representatives for our respective institutions. So I'll go ahead and I'm just going to go down in my viewpoint to Micah, if you just want to introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Hey everyone, looking forward to talking to you today. My name is Micah Trubman and I am representing IE University, which is located in Spain.
Leanne.
Hi there, my name's Leanne Allen. I'm with Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia, and I'm based in Los Angeles.
Will.
Hi there, I'm Will Abraham and I am the International Officer for the Americas at Goldsmith's University of London, and I'm based in New York.
Hi everybody, I'm Ashley Savajan with the University of Glasgow, based in Scotland.
And again, I'm Sarah Blank. I'm with University College Dublin, and I'm based in Los Angeles, California, and we are the university's in Dublin, Ireland. So I think, Micah, you have this slide, or is that me? I'm sorry, I've already forgotten. So today we're just going to be exploring international options. These are all of the different topics that we're going to discuss today. So lots of information. We will give you highlights of our individual universities as well at the end. But these are some of the features of our presentation today.
So over to me, there are a myriad of ways that students can study abroad and lots of benefits for that as well. We're obviously here to promote the full degree options abroad, which can be a really affordable way for students to study. A lot of schools overseas have 3-year bachelor degrees, so students are already saving a year of paying tuition. And a lot of schools outside the US also have 1-year master's programs. If a student doesn't feel comfortable jumping right into a 3 or 4 year overseas, there's certainly other options. Gap years are becoming increasingly popular for students to take and to gain credit for that as well. If you're familiar with Virtual education, they are certainly growing in prominence, and both Macquarie and UCD partner with them. So students actually go overseas for a semester to gain a full college credit and then either come back to the US or go on to an international university. Exchange programs, I'm sure many of you are very familiar with that. I would be surprised if there are any universities in the world that don't offer some sort of exchange program, and certainly recommend that students take that opportunity, whether it's for a semester or a year, and that can be fee paying or they continue paying their fees at their home university. I've personally studied in 5 countries, so I can tote about the benefits of study abroad all day long. But it certainly is a globalized world that we live in at the moment, and it's awesome for students to be studying somewhere and be in class with literally people from everywhere else. I had a student that graduated a couple of years ago with a Bachelor of Arts, and he came back to the US and interviewed with a multinational financial company in New York. And he said at least 30 to 40% of every stage of the interviews, and there were 5 interviews, was just about his experience in Australia. And to be able to talk about the personal growth and the opportunities that come from that, and the maturity that students gain from taking such an incredible experience are bar none, in my opinion.
So when exploring opportunities abroad, there's many different options. And the 2 main kind of categories of universities are American schools abroad and then international universities, which are run typically by the ministries of education in their countries. So an American school abroad is a bachelor degree or master's degree granting institution that's actually accredited in the United States and operates fully abroad. So you're getting an American degree, but you're still getting the opportunity to study in a foreign country, maybe learn a different language, but you're still getting that liberal arts education. Whereas an international university, a true international university would be run by the home country, and you're either doing a 3 or 4 year degree program that's a little bit different from your normal American education. Typically it's direct entry. The language of instruction of those universities might be English, or it might be other languages. It typically is a mix, especially in countries like Germany, France, and Spain, and Italy. Obviously, countries like Australia and the UK and Ireland, we are English speaking, so you'll have English language instruction. Entrance requirements do vary across these international universities. Typically, they do require some type of test scores. Obviously, that's going to be a little different now, given coronavirus. There will be probably some variation in those requirements. And the application might be on the Common App, or it could be on a designated application for that university, or it could be country specific, like UCAS, or in Ireland, there is an Irish application. Location really can vary as well, just like in the US. You can have a rural campus, you can have more of a suburban campus just outside of a city center, or an urban campus that's right in the heart of the city. Visa requirements are also something to pay attention to. When you're studying abroad, you're going to have to apply for a student visa, and then after that, you'll typically get a residence permit while you're staying in the country, but it does depend on where you're studying. Campus life can also be much different with student societies and activities. Residence life is typically kind of similar to a US university, but it does depend. There is often suite style, or you can get single study. And a lot of times you'll actually be living in a flat, especially if you're in an urban campus. The cost of attendance is something to really pay attention to as well, which we'll talk more about later. And accreditation, like I said, can be either American accredited, or it will be accredited in the home country, or it could even be dual accredited. So you'll have universities that might have both American accreditation or UK accreditation or French accreditation. So it can really vary.
Okay, so kind of moving on to different features of international universities or school. Will had kind of touched upon them briefly. But you'll typically see bachelor's degrees that are about 3 to 4 years. I'd also like to add that IE does dual degrees. So it is a 5-year program, but you're graduating with 2 diplomas, which means you have more choices when it comes to job opportunities in different markets. What's unique about the educational model in the EU or worldwide versus just the American programs is that you apply directly into a program. So if you are studying law or business, or medicine, you're starting those classes directly. So you're not necessarily adding on general education. A lot of the content is usually research-based and taught by professors that are very global and also very globally connected. And you'll find varied teaching styles. So you'll have some of them that are more lecture or seminar-based, but what's really great about studying internationally is a lot of the things that you're going to be learning are very practical. So they're going to be very applied to the world market, job market. So you get a lot more practice experience, and then also supervisions and tutorials. Independent study is expected. The programs tend to be quite rigorous. And like I mentioned, there's no general elective, so you're not taking like an English or history class again or anything like that. And you're going to be focusing on the core curriculum. Ashley, I'll have you kind of take the rest if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. And just to add on to that, one of the exciting things about studying abroad is that, you will be studying your major from day one with a lot of the programs that you apply to. And even though there's no core curriculum or general electives, you will still have some flexibility and the ability to tailor your degree by taking courses that you're interested in from outside of your degree area. So that's actually a really exciting opportunity that I personally appreciated when I studied abroad. So there are opportunities also for post-degree stayback. And you'll find that a lot of international universities have really large international student populations. So you'll have the opportunity meet students from all corners of the world, all walks of life, and it's just a really great learning environment in general. Also, one appeal of applying to overseas institutions is you might find some fast-track professional degrees that will allow you to apply to those degrees directly from high school. So sometimes the entry requirements might be a little bit higher than you might expect with some arts-based programs, but certainly is an appealing offer if you're looking for a faster track for these types of degrees, such as medicine, veterinary medicine, law, and dentistry.
So now we're going to chat a little bit about degree recognition. I think this is one of the questions that we get consistently, and I speak for all of us when I say we get them a lot. And it's a fair question, because I think that is one of the concerns that students have when they are thinking about going abroad is, will I be able to bring this degree back home? And will I be able to get a job with a degree from an international school? The answer is yes, absolutely. The world is so interconnected, especially now, and we've seen that more and more now through a global pandemic. And through everything that we've seen just in the last several months. But one of the ways that you can really assess and look at accreditation is by looking at international rankings and some of the things that are listed on this slide. So when you look at international rankings, we encourage students to look at things like the QS rankings, the Times Higher Education rankings. This is a really good way and a really good tool which students can use to research, to see different schools and how they're ranked around the world in terms of publications that they produce, in terms of research, and also searching by various subjects and by various regions of the world. So these are really good resources, but also give you an idea of accreditation and of degree recognition. As Will mentioned, in terms of accreditation, we all represent international schools that are accredited by our home country. So for example, I work for an Irish public institution. So we are accredited by the Ministry of Education in Ireland. But many of our institutions also have other accreditations, things like the Washington Accord, which is an international engineering alliance, things like the AACSB, the American Accreditation for Business, or for vet medicine, or for architecture, things that are more American specific, but then we also may have specific UK, EU accreditation and so forth, or Australia accreditation. So all of the institutions that you're seeing here and listed, these are some of the ways that you can assess. We also encourage that you utilize some of the resources through the U.S. Department of Education. And we have a little bit more of that when it comes to talking about finances. But the U.S. Department of Education does have resources to show which institutions around the world are eligible to receive U.S. direct loans. So if students wanted to use loans to fund some of their education, there are a couple hundred institutions elsewhere in the world outside of the U.S. that can accept those loans. And that's a really good way for you to assess whether or not this is a valid school, especially if you haven't heard of that school before. We would also encourage you to look at the NACAC website, the National Association for College Admission Counseling, to see who are NACAC members. That's another really good way to see the validity of these institutions, especially if you're not familiar with them or you haven't heard of them. Chat with your high school counselor, see who is visiting your school, either now virtually or in person in the future. Those are also really good ways to assess, institutions you might be interested in and how that degree might transfer. But, and I think Leanne mentioned, overseas educational systems do promote more of a specialized and focus and more of an independent study and critical thinking skills. So the mindset is that our students are incredibly prepared coming into the workforce. So not only coming from an accredited institution, but they are also having a more focused academic experience, which oftentimes translates to a higher level of skill set from the get-go going into the professional workforce. And that's something that we see a lot with our own students from our institutions. And just as a reminder, feel free to put questions in the Q&A box and we will get to those at the end.
So when applying to UK schools, we use what's called the UCAS, which is the University and College Admissions Service. It is a central application portal for all UK universities, which makes it really easy, similar to the Common App, to apply to all the universities you're interested in the UK. When you're applying, you can apply up to 5 universities, and it's a very low application fee. You're only looking at it's £20 for one university or 25 for up to 5. So it's very affordable to apply to a UK school. And the application does include demographic information, your education history, if you have any work history or volunteer experience. You will submit a consular reference and any predicted scores if you're doing the IB, and also a personal statement, which I will let Ashley elaborate more about.
Yeah, so the UCAS application is a pretty streamlined platform that students will use when applying to UK schools. They also have I highly recommend checking that out if you want to know a little bit more about what the personal statement will look like. Oftentimes we say that in the US, institutions are after your heart, and in the UK, they're after your head. So we really are focused on how your schools will make you a student at the degree that you hope to study. So it's worth checking application deadlines for UCAS. There are some early application deadlines. So if you're interested in studying medicine or law or veterinary medicine, you will need to apply by October 15th. And also if you're wanting to apply to either Oxford or Cambridge University, you will also need to meet that October 15th deadline. For most other degrees, it's going to be January 15th deadline, but just worthwhile having a check just in case your degree wants you to apply earlier. There are some different terms to make yourself aware of. So when you're applying through UCAS, you'll be offered one of three different responses. So you can receive a conditional offer, an unconditional offer, or if your application is unsuccessful. So a conditional offer just means that we would like to accept you, but you just have to meet certain conditions, for instance, an SAT exam result, and you would need to provide evidence before it gets changed to unconditional. An unconditional offer would mean that you have all the evidence required, and we are looking forward to admitting you. So a lot of students often ask me if a UK school that they're hoping to apply to is on the Common App as well as UCAS, which to use. Really, it's whichever you're comfortable with, but I personally always hear from students that UCAS is very straightforward and easy to use. So my personal recommendation is to use UCAS where possible if you're applying to UK.
Okay, just heading up to look at the admissions around the world. And I did see the question about the IB diploma. So I'll start with that. Yes, many institutions around the world, I think everyone does accept the IB diploma. And a lot of institutions will admit students based on their, oh my gosh, where's my words? 2 points above their, Sarah, what am I trying to say here?
Sorry, I have to unmute myself.
I've got it. No,
Yeah.
2 points above the predicted grades. Sorry, that was a complete whitewash. There we go. So most universities around the world will accept students based on their predicted grades. And I know for Australia that we want students to have 2 points above the predicted grades to get their conditional offer letter. And then once they have their official results, we will then be able to get them a full offer. A lot of institutions are on the common application, particularly in the UK. I think there's one Australian university on the common application. Most others are direct applications though. And I know in the UK, you cannot apply through UCAS and the common app. You have to do one or the other. For institutions overseas, it's very much an academic review. So we don't look at a student's resume and we don't really pay much attention to their curricular activities. It's very much based on their academic results. So that's their SAT or their ACT scores if they're coming from the US institutions. And it's very transparent on the websites of international universities exactly what a student needs to enter that. So we could tell a student with somewhat certainty that whether or not they're eligible for a particular degree. And with that, different requirements based on exactly what program a student wants to go to. So from Macquarie, as an example, we have programs where students could enter with a SAT score of a 1200, but some of our programs are upwards of needing a 1400. So we could let you know up front though what you are eligible for. So it's very transparent in that regard. Academic personal statements are generally needed in the UK, as Ashley mentioned. They're not needed as much in Australia, and to an extent they are required in Ireland. Most institutions do have rolling admissions, and the UK and European schools are very much based on the US institutions' timelines, except Australia and New Zealand being in the Southern Hemisphere, our dates are a little different, as with our semester starting. So if a student finishes school here in the June, they would actually commence with us in the July semester, but we can have everything organised by March, April, the year prior before starting. So it's pretty straightforward for students.
I think the biggest thing to remember when applying to schools around the world, and even in the UK as well, as Ashley and Will mentioned, is that it is really important that you assess your academic eligibility and make sure that you do meet the entry requirements, because we're not factoring in outside of academic conversations for the most part, and I'm speaking very generally, so you do want to check with each individual institution on what they might require. But generally speaking, applying to international schools is really an academic focus review. So the question is, will you be successful academically in each of these courseworks? So it's not a holistic approach to a review, which you might find at many US institutions. So something to keep in mind, questions to ask, making sure that you're connecting with the right representatives to get your questions asked, and we will give you some resources at the end as well. And then moving into financing your degree, it's really important, regardless of where you go to school, that you're making a good financial investment. And I think that anyone who's advising you in the college application process would say the same. Financing your degree at a US institution is the same as looking at an international institution. So very similar things and conversations that you're going to be having. Things like, what is the tuition per year? How long is my program? So as we mentioned, some programs are 3 years, some are 4 years. How much is housing? So do I want to live on campus? Is on-campus accommodation available? How much is it? How much would it be if I decided to move off campus into an apartment or a flat with other students? Living in a larger city is going to be a different cost of living than living in a more rural or small town. And the same conversation for international schools you will have. So it's something to do research on and to look, because many students will live on campus, but also off campus during the course of their 3 or 4 year degree. And then what are the additional fees? Are there any additional lab fees, student fees, transportation fees, and so forth? So the way we advise is that tuition and housing are always going to be the biggest expenses for students. And that's what's going to make up the bulk of the cost of attendance. But additional fees could be anything that's also mandated by the institution, but also your personal budget. So things like, how much do you like to online shop? How much do you like to go to Starbucks or grab a coffee on your way out to class? How much do you like to dine out with friends or go to the movies? How much is it going to cost for a bus pass or for local transportation? How often do you plan to travel to and from your home country? So, most of our students, for example, at UCD will come home every once or twice a year for winter break and then for summer break. So factoring in those flight costs, those things are all make up your overall cost of attendance. And all of our institutions will, and same thing in the US, will give you estimations, but it really comes down to your personal budget. So those are conversations you do need to have with your family, with people who are supporting you through this process. And it's important to understand that you're paying tuition housing directly to the institution if you're living on campus, but all these other expenses still exist. You're just not paying them directly to the institution. Many international schools offer merit-based scholarships. They are going to be more from an academic viewpoint. So as we mentioned in the admission process, it is much more of an academic review. That translates over to scholarships as well. So students can apply for scholarships, but it is going to be determined on their academic profile for the most part in what they're eligible to receive scholarship-wise. As I mentioned before, there are just about 200 institutions that are part of the U.S. Direct Loan Program. So for U.S. students, if they are factoring in using direct loans, should they qualify by filing FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, that is the only need-based aid that international schools typically will offer. So if students file FAFSA, which they should, and if you qualify for any federal aid, such as loans, those can be used. Same thing with the GI Bill. For students who file FAFSA and qualify for any federally funded or state-funded grants, those can only be used in the United States. Those cannot be used at international schools. So the way students are funding their education is out-of-pocket ability. So what can they pay out of pocket, and what can their families contribute? What scholarships did they receive, and that contributing to the overall cost, and then loans, and then if they are eligible for loans, for example, and then student employment opportunities. But in all of the countries we're talking about, students can work whether you are required to have a visa or not. However, it is something that students do have to factor in if they can have a part-time job based off their curriculum. For many institutions, that may not be an option. The coursework may be very rigorous. It may be more lab intensive depending on your program. So students may not be able to balance having a part-time job and going to class. Students who are able to have a part-time job usually use those funds to help with social activities and some smaller expenses that come up, groceries, so forth, because students typically will not be able to work enough hours during the week to cover substantial amounts of their tuition and housing, since those are much larger expenses and much larger amounts. So that is something to just be aware of. And then again, the U.S. Department of Education, as I mentioned, has good resources when you're looking at financing your degree, especially for international schools as well. So again, it's really important that you have honest conversations with your family or whoever is supporting you through this process, reaching out to counselors, reaching out to us so that we can better advise you, because this is a big part of making the right decision in your college career. Now, for international schools, the myth is that it's automatically going to be more expensive, and that's not the case. Many of our institutions are oftentimes the same amount or less than even for a California student just looking out of state, one state, two states over, or going to the East Coast, for example. So don't write it off initially because you expect it to be more expensive. That's not always the case. And you can actually save quite a bit of money, especially for comparable curriculums and rankings and so forth. And then this is our last slide. I'm going to kick it over to Micah, and then we'll get to the questions as well.
Awesome, thank you. So Sarah's mentioned quite a few resources and things to keep in mind, but if you kind of want to go a little bit deeper, what are some of the organizations that you could look into? We've already discussed rankings, but for Ireland specifically, there's an organization called Education in Ireland, which you're welcome to take a look at. If you're interested in the UK, you've got the British Council or the UCAS. Study in Australia is a good website to join, or Study Abroad as well. And then each individual university's websites are always going to have all of the information that you're going to need, whether it's, you know, the admissions requirements and all of that. And then of course us, we are located here to help you. We are, happy to assist. And then given in accordance of the presentation, we are part of RACC, or the Regional Admissions Counselors of California. So we do work with your counselors quite a bit, and we are typically usually on the road. It might be a little bit more virtual this year, but feel free to reach out. There's also the Association of International Regional Representatives, or IRNA, and then any of us that are going to be virtually visiting. I think Sarah mentioned the federal aid international school websites, and then NACAC usually comes out with a full list of schools at the beginning of every term. So you're welcome to take a look there. NACAC's a really, really good resource. So I'm going to hand it over to Will.
Yeah, so now we're just going to go through all of our universities briefly and give you a little overview. So Goldsmiths is a public research university located in the center of London. We are focusing on the performing arts, humanities, fine arts, and social sciences, including having 2 subjects in the world's top 15 and 6 among the world's top 100. We are also in the top 20 universities in the UK for international research intensity. We're a small urban campus centered around a campus green about 10 minutes from central London, so it's a great opportunity to take advantage of all the internships and work placements that London has to offer. We're a very creative campus. We also have a business incubator that is located directly on our campus, and about 15% of our students start their own business within 6 months of graduation. We have 20 academic departments with 75 undergraduate 3-year degree programs. And we also do offer international scholarships, and you can use federal loans at Goldsmiths. Accommodation is single study and suite style, and we do guarantee housing for first-year international students. One thing I'd like to highlight is that we are going carbon neutral by 2025. We have banned beef on campus in an effort to be more environmentally friendly. We're installing solar panels on all of our buildings, and our endowment has completely divested from fossil fuels. Thanks for listening.
Okay, just jumping in here. So again, I'm here representing IE University, which is located in Spain, one of the sunniest countries in the EU. We are the world's most international university, so over 75% of our students are actually coming from outside of Spain. And we are known for entrepreneurship, humanities, sustainability, and innovation. We are a business school at heart, but we'll kind of teach you to think like an entrepreneur. All of our programs are taught in English, and you will need to learn Spanish in order to graduate. It is the second most spoken language in the world, so definitely add to your repertoire. We do offer single and dual degrees, which is quite unique. So you can do a 4-year degree or a 5-year, and then again, graduate with 2 different degrees. So if you're undecided and you want to do business or law, you can do both. We have 2 campuses in Spain. So we have one in Madrid, which is the capital, it's an urban campus. And then we have another one in more like the rural countryside of Segovia, which is about 30 minutes apart from one another. We are ranked 1st in Spain, 5th in Europe, and 23rd worldwide. And we were recently just ranked number 2 worldwide by Bloomberg for the best business entrepreneurial school to go to. So if you're looking to start your own business or kind of get your hands on that, it would be a great school to attend. And we do offer on and off campus housing, and feel free to email me if you have any other questions. I'm happy to help.
Okay, over to Sydney, Australia. So Macquarie is a big public school. We have about 40,000 students, and of that, there are 12,000 international students. So certainly one of the world's most international universities. We're located about 25 minutes from the downtown area of Sydney. So best of both worlds, a big cosmopolitan city experience with the awesome beaches, and then you can retreat back to campus, which is a really beautiful parklands university. Students are welcome to live on campus if they want. It's not compulsory, but it's not guaranteed either. But if they do choose to stay on campus, you generally have your own bedroom and your own bathroom. We're a comprehensive university in terms of the courses that we do offer. Marine sciences is very popular for US students, as well as our security studies and psychology. We also have a great engineering program. We specialize in software and telecommunications, and our academics actually invented Wi-Fi. So you're welcome.
And again, I'm Sarah Blank with University College Dublin. We are located in Dublin, Ireland, just about 3 miles south of city centre. Dublin is a really nice size city, so it's not as massive as some of the larger cities in Europe, even though people expect it to be. So we only have about 600,000 people that are living in Dublin. It's consistently ranked top 10 best student cities by QS. It's very young, it's very fun, and it's very dynamic in terms of the opportunities. So we are known for the culture, the history, the music, of course, but we're also in this new age of tech and finance. So we have over 1,000 multinational companies that have their European headquarters in Dublin. So it's got this really unique vibe and flair, which makes it very fun for students to explore and to navigate going to school in an English-speaking country, and having still that very European culture as well. Lots of different programs, everything from business to all of the sciences. We're a big research institution. We have American accredited business, vet med, we have a medical school as well. We are accredited by the Washington Accord. So all of the specific American accreditations that we would need, we also have. So many of our students are coming for a variety of things. One of the benefits we also have is a liberal arts and science pathway. So because all, as we mentioned, international schools are very more academically focused in terms of you have to apply directly to a program, we do have a more flexible pathway in for students, which is really nice, so that you do have that academic experience and that experience abroad, but you have more of that flexible pathway in, similar to what you might find at an American school. We have 27,000 students, roughly about 8,000 international students, which is why we're known as Ireland's Global Institution. We do have the largest amount of international students from anywhere in Ireland. So lots of really good options for students to explore. We certainly have a lot of American students on campus, but your friend group will certainly be multinational and from everywhere. So happy to assist and answer any questions. And then lastly, we're going to go to Ashley, and then we'll answer some of your questions. So if you have anything to add, just drop them in the Q&A box.
Hey everybody, so the University of Glasgow was founded in 1451. We have around 29,000 students, and that student body is made up of around 140 nationalities. We also have a very active student bodies, so there's around 250 different clubs and societies that students can get involved with, everything from skydiving to dance to language groups, and the list goes on. Glasgow itself is the largest city in Scotland and the fourth largest city in the UK. It is a UNESCO City of Music, and on average, there's 150 different music events that take place across the city every single week. So there's always something going on. It's very student friendly. In terms of the academics, though, we have around 300 different programs that you can pick from. There are a multitude of options. So there's a lot of joint degree options, there's a lot of major minor options. We're perhaps most known for our life sciences, medical sciences, veterinary medicine, business, engineering, and our humanities courses as well. So certainly check it out for whichever course area that degree area that you're interested in. In terms of housing, so housing is guaranteed for our international students. Our tuition fees start at around $24,000 per year. It depends on what program you're studying. We do also accept FAFSA loans and GI bills, and we do have some merit scholarships available as well. So please feel free to get in touch.
All right, so I'm just going to go back to the resources slide, and we'll jump in and ask and answer some of your questions. So to the panel, I'm just going to moderate the questions and then toss you one to answer. So just to reiterate, one of the questions that came in was, how is the International Baccalaureate Certificate and/or Diploma looked at by universities? I think Leanne touched on that, but we do, these are great options. So if you do have IB or an IB curriculum, please go ahead, feel free to apply to international schools, because it will look very good, and as well as students who are successful academically coming from an IB diploma. And then one of the other questions kind of related came in talking about, will test scores like SAT subject tests be accounted for in the applications? Would someone like to talk a little bit more about testing, all the different types of testing that international schools can assess? Will, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so it really does depend by institution. So just off the bat, I'd recommend looking at each individual university website, especially in the UK, where depending on what you're looking to study, there might be different requirements, such as SAT subject tests required for, let's say, if you're looking to get into mathematics, you might need to do like a certain SAT subject tests in maths. But typically international schools will take any and all testing. So IB, there could be a combination of AP and SAT scores. It really does kind of run the gamut, but we try to make it as easy as possible for our international students to meet the conditions of their offers and receive admission. During COVID as well, I'm sure some schools will be altering their requirements. Goldsmiths in particular will be making allowances for students. I don't know if any of the other schools have made determinations yet, but we will be moving to a test optional policy.
And I would encourage, there are some questions about test scores that also came in, and just to piggyback off of what Will's saying, I think collectively for AP and SAT and ACT this year, you will need to go directly to the institutions that you're interested in order to see what their policy is on testing, given so many changes this year due to COVID-19. So unfortunately, I don't think we're in a position collectively today to answer, and give you a factual answer, because you will have to look at each individual school that you're looking for or looking at applying to and what they will accept. Testing in your academic profile will be looked at more heavily than any resume. So you will need to present yourself to the right program with a strong academic profile and meeting those requirements. So you can't fall back as much on your resume as potentially in other situations. You do have to make sure you are putting forth a strong academic profile. One question was about researching schools. So I left up this resources page. Does any panelists want to elaborate on methods that they could use to research schools and find options?
I'll jump in, Sarah. It's worthwhile checking out the Association for International Regional Representatives website, which is an organisation for representatives like us who are representing international universities but are based in the United States. So there's a wealth of information on that website, and you can find the representative as well in case there's a university there that you're interested in applying to.
That's a really good one, as well as the website for RACC is just right below. There's many international schools that are also part. So these are all great resources, as well as the country level organizations. So that would be a really good way to look at and to research schools as well. We do have a question, Leanne, and I'll let you mention it or type it into the Q&A box about Australian citizenship. But there was one question about post-degree stayback. So Ashley, do you want to elaborate on what you said about post-degree staybacks?
Yes. So sometimes when you have a visa to study in another country, there might be opportunity for you to either extend that visa or to stay and continue in further study or to perhaps work. It would depend on the visa that you have and the requirements in the country that you're studying, but it is worth knowing that country that they go to study overseas in. So I know with the Tier 4 student visa, for instance, it is extended a few months after you graduate. So it's worthwhile looking into those opportunities in the country that you're going to study in.
Sometimes it could be 6 months, it could be a year or 2 years. It could depend on whether you're completing an undergraduate program or a graduate level program. So really good option to look into. It will vary from country to country, but something worth noting as well. One of the questions, this is a great question. How do students, institutions approach language barriers for universities in non-English speaking countries? I think most of us represent English speaking countries, so it's not as much of an issue, but Micah, do you want to talk a little bit about for students who are studying in Spain and how they might
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure all of us have international students that are going to be applying to our institutions that are English or studying in English. Specifically for IE, we actually have a very holistic admissions process. So it is academic, but also extracurricular. And previously in the past, we have accepted SATs and ACTs, which was a good indicator that you have a good handle on the English language. But that was always optional for us. And we also have specifically our own admissions test that actually measures English. And then there's also the other English test. I'm having an issue like Leanne today. It's been a long week. The TOEFL exam or the TOEFL exam that a lot of international students take, that they have to get a certain score in order to apply at an English speaking university. Some of our schools also, not all of them, will incorporate an interview in the admissions process. And so that's also another great way for you to, or for other students to present their English speaking skills, along with their essays that they're going to be writing or their, their personal essays. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers it, unless anybody had anything else to add, but I think that's usually pretty much it.
Perfect. So there are no other questions in the Q&A box. Thank you so much for those of you for listening, for participating today. We hope the information we provided was informative. Hopefully you learned something new, have some good resources to take away with you in order to properly start your process in research or continue. Please feel free to view the RACC directory at regionaladmissions.com. We do have other webinars coming up throughout the month of June and July. So more information that you can find by registering for those, all of our contact information as well. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought as well. So feel free to go on to the regionaladmissions.com website. We're happy to help and be a resource for you, and we will see you virtually somewhere else. You're also able to send us an email if you want to get on our mailing list. We do have your contact information from registering for this session, but so you will get follow-up information from us. But if you need anything, let us know. And with that, we're going to stop recording, and we hope that you have a wonderful summer and a rest of your Thursday.